We begin this prestigious workshop with a welcome and inauguration ceremony. It is my honor to introduce the esteemed speaker who will set the stage for today's program. Please join me in welcoming Professor Subramanya Raju, Head of the Center of South Asian Studies, Pondicherry University, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to everyone. Respected Registrar Professor Rajneesh Bhutani, Madam Professor Chandrika Madam, Dean, School of Social Sciences and International Studies, Professor Subha Chandran, Dean from NIAS, National Institute of Advanced Studies, faculty members of South Asian Studies, participants, delegates, students and friends. On behalf of the Center for South Asian Studies and National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore, I cordially invite you to the two-day workshop on China in South Asia. And this is a very relevant, timely topic on which we have to discuss, because everywhere we are talking about how China is penetrating into different parts of the world and how the South Asian countries view China. And sometimes we look at, as a student of international relations, we look at whether China is in South Asia or South Asia in China. That kind of a sense we get when we are looking at the way China is penetrating into different parts. And we also know how South Asia can be seen, viewed, because a lot of mistrust, there is the trust deficiency in terms of understanding, in terms of relationship, in terms of partnership, or in terms of cooperation in South Asia. But on the other hand, if you look at South Asia, is seen as important region that is gaining global identity, and also it is seen as one of the fastest growing economy or economies in the world, and also it is trying to integrate with the rest of the world. And we look at that again when you talk about China and its neighbors. If you look at, except India, no country in South Asia has border with more than 2 countries. But then if you look at, China is having border with 5 countries in South Asia, but at South Asia, China is not part of South Asia. So now look at this situation where we look at how China is penetrating into South Asia, and also probably look at how countries like India views Chinese presence in South Asia. When we look at, China is not part of South Asia, but we look at in terms of trade, in terms of investment, in terms of political relation with other countries, and particularly if we talking about South Asian security, invariably we cannot ignore China. China has to come into picture when we are talking about South Asian security. And also you look at the nuclear proliferation in South Asia. India went for nuclear program. One of the main reasons was because of China. And Pakistan went for nuclear program because of India. There is a kind of looking at the trilateral engagement between these 3 countries which made South Asia vulnerable in terms of nuclear proliferation. On the other hand, if you look at how 1962 war makes strained relationship between India and China, which really made more concern for subsequently after 1962, India was great concern for the Chinese policy towards other countries in South Asia. If China has good relation with other countries, India feels uncomfortable. When Pakistan has good relation with America, India had problem during Cold War, and now Pakistan is uncomfortable when India has good relation with the United States. You have kind of asymmetric situation in South Asia, which makes countries to look differently or view differently when they have relation with other countries. And also there is a problem subsequently after war between India and China in 1962, 63, Pakistan had an agreement with China where it has given some portion of area which was contested between India and Pakistan, thereby one of the reasons for India not to part of BRI. And we know how BRI is so strong. 149 countries are part of BRI, and that shows how China is integrated with other countries in the world. And the relation between the relation between China and Pakistan caused a sense of unease in India. And in other words, one can say Pakistan was instrumental, or is instrumental in drawing China into the region in a big way and make India so uncomfortable. And China has been seen as a factor in determining relation between India and other countries in South Asia, where we can see how SAARC was failed or has been seen as a failure after 2016, when after 18th summit we are yet to have 19th summit. And that was also seen one of the factors for India to look into this. And also China has very good relation with other countries, and also we have seen in the recent past the way we see the problem in Pakistan or in Afghanistan or Sri Lanka or Maldives, and recently we have witnessed the crisis in Bangladesh. You look at the vulnerability which we see in South Asia, and the stability is the one which we're talking about, is more concern for South Asian countries to look at how stability is in need of the hour. And China is the largest trading partner in South Asia, and if you look at how BRI is seen as instrumental in expanding Chinese influence, and if you look at the contribution of China with other countries, particularly in South Asia, in terms of debt, look at Pakistan is having 72% from China, whereas Maldives is having 68% of debt in terms of having aid from China. And Sri Lanka 57%, and Nepal is having 27% from China. That shows how the countries in South Asia could not ignore Chinese presence or Chinese relation with them. And also on the other hand, when you look at China has to realize that without cooperation with India, its presence in South Asia would be difficult, and China is trying to assert its supremacy in South Asia by ignoring India. And if you look at even BRI, when the Premier of China visited India after met the Premier of Sri Lanka or Maldives, and he discussed about BRI, but the Premier who came to India after his visit to Sri Lanka and Maldives, he did not even refer to the initiative of BRI. So that shows how India was reluctant to join BRI. One of the reasons could be. And the asymmetric relation between China and South Asian countries does not forecast a potential expansion of Chinese interest in the region. And probably we can look at, on one hand, the positive aspect of Chinese presence in South Asia. On the other hand, you look at what are the implications for the South Asian countries in terms of debt, in terms of looking at a particular country is having uncomfortability when it is improving its relation with other countries. And also, when you look at 1962 war was one which made India to be more uncomfortable with India. But probably in the next 2 days workshop, probably we can look at the different scenarios where we can see in the near future how one could see the relation between China and South Asian countries. Probably one could look at how geography as a factor in China and the South Asian relations, when some of the countries are looking for or advocating or looking for China as a member of SAARC. So look at that aspect, one could see how that could be seen as one of the factors in determining the relation between China and South Asia in the near future. And also how China failed to bring the South Asian countries together to work against India, because Chinese most important factor, driving factor for China to be closely associated with the countries to counter China, but then it failed to bring all the countries together to fight against China, India. And also the another scenario building one could see in the near future how South Asian countries depend on India for non-traditional security, addressing non-traditional security issues, and how China depends mainly on Pakistan to counter India, and how China fails to what extent to counter India. Or one can see that China could be seen as a factor for the strained relation between India and India and Pakistan. And also one could see that being adversary in international relations, we cannot say enemy, but then being adversary, whether India is gaining some kind of advantages and how the world is viewing India when India is distancing or China is distancing with India or vice versa, and when there is no cordial relationship between India and China, how India is benefiting, to what extent, and to what extent it is also failed to have or missing opportunity to grow, or to rising powers which are neighbor to each other and which are nuclear powers, how they could be seen by the rest of the world. So probably that could be seen different scenarios where we could see in the next 2 days to look at how one can view Chinese relation with the countries in South Asia. And finally, I once again invite you cordially to actually participate and make this workshop a success. And also, finally, I express my thanks to Registrar for being with us. Despite his schedule, he made it point to be with us, and we are very thankful to you, sir. And so we are also thankful to Chandrika Madam, Dean, School of Social Sciences and International Studies, being with us in the inaugural address. We are also very thankful to Professor Subhash Chandran and the National Institute of Advanced Studies for giving the opportunity to Center for South Asian Studies and Pondicherry University to collaborate with this kind of workshops. And this is the second event we are organizing on China and South Asia. We did in 2019 on China and South Asia, funded by South Asia Foundation. And now this event, second event, is funded by National Institute of Advanced Studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your warm and insightful welcome. Now, I'm delighted to introduce Professor Subhash Chandran, Dean, School of Conflict and Security Study at NIAS, to give his introductory remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kavita Shri. Good morning, all. Respected Registrar, Professor Bhutani, respected Dean, Professor Chandrika, Raju, my good friend, fellow faculty and scholars, especially from the center. Let me thank you first for agreeing to be a co-host for this workshop, the second workshop of our program, China, East Asia and the Pacific Area Studies at the Institute here in Pondicherry University. Once again, sir, I was referring to it. The infrastructure here and the scholarly input that we get from Pondicherry University is we sincerely appreciate this relationship that we have built over the last few years. Faculty, the administration, and more importantly the scholars and the head of the center. We sincerely thank you for your support for the last many years. And now today what I intend to do, I'll make it in 3 points or try to answer 3 questions. What we have been doing and what we are doing today here and what we intend to do, all relating to the workshop China in South Asia. At the Institute, National Institute of Advanced Studies, we have an area studies program looking at China, East Asia and the Pacific. The scholars who are coordinating it are with us here. Maybe some of you may want to interact with them. As a part of that area studies, this year we are doing a project on China in South Asia. The focus is on China in South Asia. So we had the first round of discussions in Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam. I mean, Raju took part in it. A couple of fast. I think you were a part of that program in MG University as well. So this is the second workshop we are doing in China in South Asia. The objective of this China in South Asia is to study China from a multidisciplinary, multi-geographic perspective. What do I mean by multidisciplinary and multi-geographic? It's scholars like us have an extra focus on politics, international relations, and political science. But China is much more than that. I think we need to study China's history, China's geography, China's economy, China's demography, China's space intervention, China's technology, China's energy program. I think all of them interweave and present a bigger challenge than we think what China's challenge is. We only look at India-China relations, India-China border dispute. China seems to be studied from a multidisciplinary perspective. I think that's a larger idea of our program at the institute. So China in South Asia is our first initiative in this. So today, that's my second point. What are we doing today and tomorrow? This is a workshop, especially for the young scholars. If you look at the program, at least 80% of the presentation, except those keynote addresses by senior faculty from Kathmandu, Dhaka, and Colombo, all other presentations, I'm hoping they all would lead to a writing and a publication after the review. All are written by young scholars with the idea to build capacity amongst our young scholars to focus on China from different perspectives. So today and tomorrow we have with us scholars from our campus, the Pondicherry University, from different departments. If you see the program, you will notice not just the Center for South Asia Studies. That I'm thankful to Raju for getting other departments also on board. We have students from Madras University, from Christ University in Bangalore, St. Joseph's University in Bangalore, Hyderabad, University of Hyderabad from Hyderabad. So we have the students from these universities will be discussing today and tomorrow. I'm hoping that they'll be able to send me the finalized product in the next 4 to 6 weeks so that it leads to a publication, a monograph, if you will, or a report at the institute. So that's what we are doing. This is a part of a larger process, what we are doing today and tomorrow. The third question, what we intend to do. I think that's a bigger question. That's a bigger question that I want to share with you what we intend to do. At the institute, I have a small team. They publish a daily brief on China, and then they also publish a monthly monitor on China. If we have to look at history, geography, politics, economy, energy, demography, space, science and technology, a small team is not sufficient. We need, for a country of China's magnitude, we need no less than 10 to 12 institutions and 50 to 100 scholars working with us. There is no way National Institute of Advanced Studies can do it on our own. So one of the reasons why I'm here is looking for partners, and also looking for students like you, because we need to look at that. If we want to look at, for example, Belt and Road Initiative, unless we understand the history behind it, why did they build the wall some time back, and why are they breaking the wall through Belt and Road Initiative? We will never be able to appreciate. Why did they have two-child policy or one-child policy, and why now they are wanting to break it up? Different disciplines, we need to study China. We need to study China through different disciplines, and no single institutions can study it. I'm glad here we have a registrar and a dean from 2 different disciplines. We need those disciplines to study China. I'll be very grateful if you could take this message back to your respective departments and get us connected with your department. We need them. One big objective is to build a network. And the second big objective, that's what we intend to do, is we need scholars. We don't want scholars to start after PhD, after they become assistant faculty. I need to start from undergrad, postgraduate students. That's a way we need to catch them. If we have to invest for the next 10-15 years. So we are looking at young scholars like you. I'm hoping at least 5% of you will get enthused with us and join us in working with us. Need not necessarily come to NIAS. We can work with in multiple capacity as an institutional partner, as an individual network member. So we are looking to build a network. Third, we need a larger team to strengthen our publication process. No research is respected unless it is in one or the other form of a publication. So we need those publication, and if my program needs to grow, we need more publications. We do have, but we need quantity, we need quality. I'm also here trying to get more scholars like you from different disciplines who would be interested in working with us, more importantly, publish with us. So with that note, let me thank once again Raju and his center, the registrar and the dean. Sir and ma'am, the support of this institution has been immense to our journey in the last 4 years. In fact, if outside NIAS, if there is one institution where we have had more events, I think it should be Pondicherry University. Thank you for that support, and I'm kind of hinting this should continue. Thank you all for this opportunity.
Thank you, Subha sir, for your valuable words. I hope everyone will definitely join your team. Thank you, sir. So now I invite Dr. Subha sir to felicitate our chief guest. Thank you, sir. So now, I formally introduce our chief guest of the day, Professor Rajneesh Bhutani, sir. So I'll give a little bit of introduction about him. He's an isotope geochemist, and his area of specialization is isotope geochemistry and geochronology. He is also the faculty of Department of Earth Science, School of Physical, Chemical and Applied Science, Pondicherry University. He have been teaching in Pondicherry University for about 18 years now. Now I formally invite Professor Rajneesh Bhutani, sir, to inaugurate this workshop. We are honored to have you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate the effort that she has taken to find out this introduction. Though it is slightly 4-year-old now, I have been teaching here for last 22 years. But
I'm sorry, sir.
no, I just for a lighter note. And I really feel privileged to inaugurate such a timely workshop, China in South Asia, as Professor Raju and Professor Dr. Subha Chandran has very eloquently has mentioned the importance of such workshop. So I really feel privileged and honored that I got invited for this inauguration session. I'm thankful to them. And I want to ensure and reciprocate the feelings what Dr. Sudha Chandran was telling, that Pondicherry University also very gratefully acknowledge and appreciate the intellectual rigor that NIAS is bringing to all these deliberations. So thank you so much for that. Without your intellectual rigor that you are bringing in, we would not have been doing so much that we could do in the leadership of Professor Raju and other faculty members who are there part of this department. I also take this opportunity on behalf of Pondicherry University to appreciate Dean Madam to be very active supporter of all such kind of activity in the school and encouraging everything. So thank you, ma'am, for this. Coming back to this theme of the workshop, China in South Asia, as everybody knows, it is so timely. In fact, yesterday, I was reading a news item, and then I thought I would use that statement made by General Trivedi, I think, Army Chief, on the sidelines of the curtain raiser for the Chanakya Defense Dialogues, which are going to be held next, and this month, I think 24th, 25th. So on a curtain raiser event, when he was interacting with the reporters, of course, major issue is the border issue between China and India. So people were asking what is the situation on LAC, and he was telling situation is stable, but still sensitive. We have to work hard to bring it back to the April 2020 situation. But what I found very interesting phrase that he used, he said that to deal with China, one has to compete, cooperate, coexist, contest, and confront. So this sums up the entire gamut of studies that probably all the scholars must have been taking into consideration. Now, when I look at all these separate words, coexist is obvious thing. I mean, you cannot do away the coexistence of every country. I mean, you have to. There is no other option. But when it comes to the other cooperation, contest, context, confront, that is something where these kind of workshops providing the strategic plannings are very, very crucial. But I would like to speak because he generated certain thoughts while he was speaking, Dr. Sudha Chandran, about the multidisciplinary approach. I was just thinking, and I mentioned it to him also, when it comes to the competition, it is said that this competition, particularly competition of India and China, as far as bilateral relations are concerned in South Asia, I don't remember, but I think it was some other commentator which I was reading a few days back. I think it was Mr. Jabin or someone he's supposed to be China expert. He said this competition was not there a decade back between China and India. I'm not sure. I'm an outsider from this particular field, but probably you can deliberate. 10 years back, the situation was very different. India was very comfortable with its role, its strategic and its important role in the South Asian countries, and it was not so high priority area. So suppose some request of investment or some assistance come from Sri Lanka or Nepal or Maldives, India used to take its own time to respond. But once the China entered, and it happened, it seems, in the last decade in very intensively, now India cannot be so relaxed as far as the relationship between the other countries are concerned. So the competition has increased. Now, this looks apparently the case of the past 10 years. It probably has increased between India and China as far as South Asian relationships are concerned. But what I find from an outsider, a layman, an informed citizen, you can say, or with some perspective of earth sciences, I think this has not come just in last 10 years, or it is not the result of sudden change in the Chinese policy of with respect to the South Asia. I think it has been in building for so many years. It is a long-term efforts that China has been taking to come up as a significant, unignorable world power. And when you think that what it has been doing for so many years, one thing which I see as an outsider is that it has been strengthening its economy in all respect. And if you say that how India could not do the same thing which China could do in so many years and strengthen and position itself as a major economic power which nobody can ignore today. And today they say because of that, this so powerful China, now you don't have a bipolar world, you have many polars which are emerging, and China is emerging as a big pole of power in this today's world. So what it was doing which India could not do. So from a science perspective or a science perspective, when I look at it, I remember my visit to China in year 2000. That was the first time, or that the last time I went to China. And I went to a place called Chengdu, in the Chengdu University. We were participating in a conference there. And then I happened to talk to many the colleagues, Chinese colleagues in the research and the science and technology field. There I was amazed to see how much money China was putting in research and development activity. I mean, it was beyond our imagination. When here we were struggling to get a grant of, let us say, 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs, there they were offered on platter crores of rupees, Indian rupees, for establishing new laboratories, for calling the biggest personalities of science technology to their university, paying them honorarium. In fact, China started paying many times salary of US dollars and Australian dollars and bringing those people to their country and started building the research and technology, research and development to all sectors, all major sectors, which will finally contribute to the economic growth. So it was a very long-term view. This is my opinion. I mean, I may be wrong. It is open to discussion, and one can counter. But I think it was a very long-term view of investing in the core sectors, particularly in the research in all sectors. That finally is now yielding the dividends to China. And if you look at that, and if you come to today's conflicts and today's biggest security threats or whatever, there also you would find that the heart of that problem that many countries are concerned today, including US, not only in India, is certain resources that is monopolized by China. And when I'm saying, I'm talking about the critical minerals, which are very critical to the defense sector, to the telecommunication, to the renewable energy sector, particularly lithium, graphite, cobalt, nickel, chromium, antimony, neodymium, gadolinium. These are the critical minerals. Many of them, most of the countries depend on the import from China. Now, China not only is having natural resources, it is of course bestowed by the nature to have such kind of natural resources. China also invested and built up processing technique for these minerals. So they do not just simply export the raw material, they actually do all the cycles of for the final goods. So right from the raw material to processing, even for recycling of certain critical minerals, it has the latest state-of-the-art technology, which I'm sure could not have been built in one day. It must have been spending long-term research view and expenditures to build it that. So now, of course, to come out of this, what they say, supply chain potential supply chain disruption type of scenario, America started, putting some embargo on Chinese import and technology, and China started doing tit for tat for US. But India still does not have in position to have any kind of embargo like of thing to China, because many of these critical minerals are 100% imported by China, from China. So this is one thing which is now affecting all kinds of relationships, because you cannot survive without going towards the renewable energy. So if you have to have very efficient batteries, if you have to have net zero by 2030 achievement, then you have to have lithium, you have to have graphite. But you do not have processing technology, you don't have even recycling technology. So my point which I wanted to make, and maybe these 2 days one can bring in the panel discussion if you think, that why don't we deliberate from 2 or 3 different perspectives. One is what is the short-term strategy, or what is the short-term planning, or what are the short-term ramifications of China in South Asia. What could be the mid-term and what could be the long-term. So when you take long-term views, there's only way to be patient, to invest now in the key sectors, which will finally take India to an advantageous position to dictate terms to China, not only China, but to the other countries also when it comes to the interest or safeguarding the interest of the nation. So when you want to dictate terms in relationship, you have to have all the resources to your command. You have to have all the key sectors. You have to have self-dependence on that. You should not have over-dependence on the others. And then only you can have some upper hand in the bilateral or multilateral dialogues. So in that, if I'm very happy that NIAS has chosen Pondicherry University as a partner to have such kind of workshops where the active young scholars are going to be major participants. So this is where the new ideas, new perspective would emerge. So I'm very happy and congratulate all of you who are participating in this particular workshop. From Pondicherry University's behalf, I welcome all those people who have come from the outside university, including our 3 keynote speakers from 3 different countries. I extend my heartfelt welcome to them, and I hope that those people who have come outside would have a pleasant stay here, have a very useful intellectual discussion. I thank everyone, thank the organizers, and wish the workshop a big success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your inspiring inaugural address. So now we have Professor Chandrika ma'am with us. She has been teaching and researching in the Department of History since 1992. She specializes in historiography, intellectual history, history of women, and history of medicine. She has also received Pondicherry University's Best Teacher Award for year 2016 and 2018. She is currently the Dean of the School of Social Science and the International Studies. Now I would like to invite Professor G. Chandrika ma'am to deliver her remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Respected Registrar of the University, Professor Rajneesh Bhutani. Sir, Bhutani sir belongs to the area of earth sciences, but I find him to be a down-to-earth person, maybe because of his background. And also, somebody mentioned that I got the Best Teacher Award consequently for 2 years or something. But he has been receiving the Best Teacher Award continuously, and I am jealous of him for that. And now I am very happy to address our Professor Subhash Chandra. He is the Dean of School of Conflict and Security Studies in National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore. And he has come all the way, and he has shown so much of interest in reviving interest in the subject of history, which is a passionate subject for me. And so I'm so glad to welcome him today. And head of the department and Center for South Asian Studies, the organizer of this workshop, Professor Subramaniam Raju. And the colleagues in the Center for South Asian Studies, we have Professor Purushottam, Professor Humayun, and Dr. Santosh Matthew. All of them are my good friends. For a long period of time, I have been associated with this center, and I am happy to stand here before you, students, scholars, and all the people who have gathered here today for the second workshop on Beijing's long shadow, China in South Asia. A very pleasant afternoon to one and all. I have been doing some homework for the past 1 week since Professor Raju told me that I have to give some remarks today. And this is an occasion for all of us to revive our knowledge of any subject. This is the purpose of the workshop. Otherwise, I would not be going through all the scholarly things and trying to update my knowledge about China in South Asia. And I'm happy that it is a workshop for young scholars who have come forward to do some research and present their research in this workshop. So that is something I appreciate. And you know, traditionally, we know that South Asia is referred to as the strategic backyard of India. But then what happens now? We find that Beijing's long shadow is cast over this backyard. And I am surprised to see that some of the articles that I read talk about a decade-long interest of China in Southeast Asia or South Asia. But as a professor from the background of history, I understand that China's interest in South and Southeast Asia is goes long back, perhaps to the 15th century, because this is as old as the origin of empires. So the Chinese empire, what we call the Ming Empire, was interested in sending expeditions to India. So we have the historic personality of Zheng He, the Mongol eunuch who served the Ming Emperor, who was sent to the Indian Ocean region with many ships. And this is actually a fleet of ships consisting of Chinese junks. And historically, we understand that Chinese junks were replacing Arab ships from the 11th century onwards. The Chinese and the Arabs have a conflict in the South China Sea, and the Chinese were slowly taking over the trade from the Arabs. So these fleet consisted of junks, commercial ships, warships, and also what is known as treasure ships. These treasure ships actually carried treasures from China as a kind of a show-off, you know, that China is so wealthy. So they carried treasures. And the Chinese emperor had a system. Today, what we call a patent system, he established. So wherever the expedition went, they established some diplomatic relations, and they were supposed to be part of a tributary system with the emperor. So the emperor gave them some documents and made them part of a Chinese sphere of influence. So what I mean to say is establishing a sphere of influence is as old as the days of empire, and China was also doing that. And here we come across two important figures. One is Zheng He, or his original name was Ma He. Ma actually is a Chinese equivalent for Muhammad. So he and his lieutenant by name Ma Huan, both were from the same province. And Ma Huan actually knew many languages. He was a diplomat, a translator, and a linguist who was left the account of Zheng He's journeys. Because Zheng He made 7 expeditions starting from 1406 to 1433. And he touched upon all the important ports of Southeast Asia and South Asia, making his presence felt in Calicut. And we also have subsequent Portuguese expeditions, and these Portuguese missions actually mention about the Chinese settlements in Calicut, in Kollam, and also in Calcutta. We hear about China Kota, which was established very near Calcutta. There was one China Kota in Kollam also, and we also hear about a Chinese trading community who were settled in Malabar. And we hear about this community of Chinese who, from the Malabar Manual of Logan. So to such an extent we find that the keen interest of the Chinese in establishing economic spheres of influence with commercial interest, with trade with Indian regions in the eastern and western coast of India and other important countries of Southeast Asia is a very ancient factor, I would say. But now we find China has a keen interest in South and Southeast Asia and is expanding its economic and political influence in South Asia, especially in the vulnerable 4, namely Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal, and Bangladesh. Though these countries share historical, political, and cultural ties with India, China's role as a developmental partner vis-a-vis India's role, which is considered as a meddling partner, has leveraged China in a better position in these countries of late. So, whereas these countries see India as a meddling partner, they welcome China as a developmental partner because of the loans and mega projects that the Chinese are building, mega infrastructure projects that the Chinese are building in these countries. So we find that foreign policy experts have kept China under a scanner for what is known as the debt trap policy. And this is also not new to history because we hear about dollar diplomacy or big stick policy of the Americans during the Cold War period. So such a thing is not new. And according to a reliable source, we find that China's loans to Sri Lanka, say at the end of 2020, were $4.6 billion. And whereas the overall figure for Maldives is believed to be between $1.1 billion and $1.4 billion. So as far as Sri Lanka and Maldives are concerned, we find China is loaning and using the debt kind of a tool to control the countries. And these economic engagements serve Chinese strategic ends and help expand its influence in South Asia. But if we find that China also is developing other kind of tools, not only economic tools, but also other kind of tools. For example, they actually take into collaboration the local political elite in these South Asian countries, especially in the 4 countries I mentioned, and they give them some advantage. For example, the mega projects that they are undertaking, they will just complete on the eve of the election there. And this will be helping a political party to establish some influence. And so they are actually welcoming the cooperation with China. And the corporate giants of China are actually very present in these countries. And they also have some influence in the field of mass media and journalism. For example, they give some incentives like some advertisements in the journals, and so use that as a kind of an influence to give some pro-Chinese propaganda in the journals, or else they also use some threat to journalists to give some propaganda about Chinese connection, how the Chinese are non-interfering in the politics of these countries, which is a very false picture that they are trying to so we find that China has been using other tools like engaging with local political elite and providing them a political advantage by timing project completion just ahead of elections. Countries which have a robust political system steer clear of such strategies, but countries with political and economic vulnerabilities see an unmistakable advantage in cooperating with China. So when I was searching, I found that Carnegie Mellon Institution has an initiative called Carnegie Global Endowment Global Project, where we have analysis by experts, and that they do with a kind of policy advisory for the government of United States of America. But there I found a project carried out in 2021 points out that fragile state institutions, weak civil society, and capturable states and systems constitute three major vulnerabilities in South Asia, allowing China to establish political and economic footprints in that region. Perhaps addressing these vulnerabilities would be a key to India's future policy in South Asia. And talking on a personal note, I would like to mention here that born just 13 years after independence, I was a small child, just 2 years old, when China carried out an aggression over India, the Sino-Indian War of 1962. And those days I would call, from my point of view, as Chacha Nehru days, because we were all taught about Chacha Nehru, because as young children we were celebrating Children's Day and all these things. And even at home, coming from an academic background, I felt the Sino-Indian War was very much discussed, and whereas Chu Enlai was actually depicted as a kind of a Janus-faced individual coming to India several times and just traveling along with Nehru, Hindi, China, bye-bye, he was saying, but on the other hand, he sent armies to India. This is the kind of a picture as a young child I had. And since I was brought up in an environment of very strong nationalism, I also for a long time considered Chu Enlai as a villain. But after I became a student and I started having an academic view of everything, I understood things in perspective. But every leader is having an environment in which they are doing what they consider best for their country. So this is how we come to a critical view of either Nehru's policy or Chu Enlai's policy from the context which was being mentioned by our registrar. And it is always a very good thing to be the last speaker, because the last speaker can always say, as mentioned before by my colleagues here, because they have stated everything, I am just approving or saying all the things, endorsing all the things they said. So I have that advantage today, and I look forward to some scholarly discussions in the forthcoming workshop. I congratulate the organizers, the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore, the Center for South Asian Studies, Pondicherry University, for holding a workshop on this very important theme, especially in view of the recent political disturbance in Bangladesh. I actually thank the organizers, Professor Raju and his departmental colleagues, for giving me this opportunity to have refreshing my ideas about this particular topic. And I am also sure that these young scholars are waiting to unfold a lot of things during this two-day workshop. and I have no doubt that the participants would benefit immensely by listening to and interacting with the young scholars. And I now congratulate the center, both Professor Subhash Chandra and Professor Subramaniam Raju, for this excellent workshop. And also, I know that Professor Raju is known for publishing all the proceedings of the conferences that he conducts, and I also look forward that this also will lead to a publication with a reputed publisher. With these few words, I leave you to the experts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your enlightening words. With that, we conclude the welcome and inaugural session of this workshop. We now look forward to diving into the first session of the day, which will begin shortly. I encourage everyone to remain seated as we prepare for the insightful presentation to follow. Once again, I thank you everyone and the guests for joining us today. Let's make this workshop a resounding success. Thank you.